Good morning, everybody. Great to see you all. Thanks for joining us at Let's Talk. We got Miss Hannah Sudworth joining us all the way from Chicago. We've been trying to get Hannah on the show for a little while. You were actually, when we started to conceptualize Let's Talk, you were one of the names that we had right from the beginning.
Wow.
And so it's a great delight to have you here with us, all the way from Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So to give a little context, we've known your family pretty much for 20 plus years, maybe 25 plus years. And you are how old?
I'm 22.
Okay.
Turned 22 6 months ago.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. So we've had your dad on the show, actually. We've had Steve on the show. And you guys immigrated to America how long ago?
17 and a half years ago. It was in May of 2004. So
Okay.
yeah, 17 years ago.
So you go and plant a church in Chicago, yeah?
Yes.
And that's still what your dad is doing?
Yep.
So just to give a little bit of context, we're going to fast forward through all of that, through you immigrating from South Africa, being part of a church planting family, all of that. We fast forward to you going to school at Northwestern, right?
Yes.
And
I started in the fall of 2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
And studying what?
At the time, I was studying mechanical engineering. That has since changed. But yeah, I was in the mechanical engineering program at Northwestern.
There you go. And so then on a particular day, you have a very, very serious medical emergency.
Yeah. So
Talk us through that and what you remember of that.
Right. Yeah. So it was 3 days after my birthday. I just turned 19. And it was a normal day. Nothing out of the ordinary. Went for a run in the morning, went to class. And then around 1 p.m., I was back in my dorm room and I started getting a really bad headache. And I was like, I wonder if this is a migraine, because my dad used to get migraine. So I was like, I wonder if this is a migraine. So I texted my mom and I was like, hey, I think I have a migraine. She's like, drink a bottle of water, turn the lights off, go take a nap. So I tried to lie down. And as I was lying down, it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I realized, like, it was the most unbearable pain. Like, it felt like, it's really hard to describe, but it felt like there was like 1,000 hammers hammering my brain, like inside. And I was like, very clearly, something is wrong. Like, I need help. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm alone in my dorm room. It was a single room. I didn't have a roommate. And I would text my mom. I was like, it's getting worse. Like, I don't know what to do. And then I remember I was like lying on the floor. Like, I was on the floor at this point. And I realized, I was like, I think I'm dying. Like, I don't know what it is, but I think I'm dying.
Wow.
And then I have 6 days of memory missing from my head after that point.
From that moment.
Yeah, that's the last thing I remember. I was lying on my floor, unable to move, in this like writhing in pain. Like, it was just so unbearable. It was like all I could feel in that moment was just pain. And I realized, I was like, I think I'm dying.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you wake up 6 days later.
Well, I woke up before then, but I don't remember anything. Like, my memory is super hazy and foggy. But what happened was my mom FaceTimed me because she sensed that something was wrong, which was the Lord telling her that, like, your daughter's in trouble. So she FaceTimed me. I don't remember any of this. This is like on my mom's account. And I was apparently like very incoherent. I was mumbling. I wasn't making sense. My mom was telling me to leave my dorm room and go get help, but my body wasn't responding because at that point my brain had started like deteriorating, so it wasn't sending signals to my body anymore. She yelled at James Lusk, who was working at the office with her that day, to call 911, and she hopped in her car and like started driving up to Northwestern, and which is like 8 miles away from where she was at the time. James called campus emergency services because they would know where my dorm is. And then they ended up breaking down my door. But the thing is that they thought it was a drug overdose because in their mind, there's a 19-year-old girl passed out in her dorm room. Like, they're gonna think that it's a drug overdose. So I ended up going to the hospital. They started running tests for a drug overdose, which can take up to 40 minutes. And those 40 minutes would have killed me. Like, if there was like seconds away. But yeah, my heart rate had dropped to 20 beats per minute. It was like, she is on her way out. But yeah, it was crazy.
And so obviously we were part of that process a little bit later. I think we
Right.
flew in maybe 4 or 5 days after the event, once
Yeah.
once you'd been out of ICU. So just, I mean, what was it? What happened
Yeah.
to you?
So what happened was it was something called an AVM, which is an arteriovenous malformation. And basically the way I understand it is that there's arteries in your body and then there's veins in your body and they connect in your heart. And basically an AVM is an abnormal connection of these arteries and veins somewhere not where it's supposed to be. So they often happen in the spine or in the brain. They're extremely rare, but basically what happens is they get tangled. So it's kind of like if you're playing with a garden hose and you grip one end of the garden hose, like the pressure builds up and it gets kind of like fat. So that's kind of what happens with AVMs. Like the pressure builds up, so you get this like huge tangle of blood vessels. So oxygen flow, blood flow is weakened in that area. And the blood vessels are super weak, so they're at risk for rupturing. And basically that's what happened. Mine ruptured and caused a bleed in my
And
brain.
that's in your brain.
Yeah. So it was right behind my left eye, like right on the frontal lobe. And yeah, so it ruptured and it caused a bleeding over my brain, which is called a hemorrhagic stroke. And there's blood covering, I think like 30 to 40% of my brain when they got the CAT scans done.
Gee.
Yeah, or the CT scans.
And so, I know little bits of the story,
Right.
you know, obviously from our conversations with your parents,
Yeah.
with you, with Matt and Sheetal.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, there seems like there's some split-second timing involved here.
Yeah.
Or you don't make it.
Right,
In
exactly.
reality. And I mean, I hate to say it that harshly, but that is...
No, but it's true.
This was a very, very life-threatening
Yeah.
kind of a situation, right?
Yeah.
And so even in that thing of you saying they thought it was an overdose, it's college, it's a young girl, etc.
Yeah.
Right? So from again, like from bits and pieces of the story, Sheetal's at the hospital, right? And Sheetal's a doctor
Right.
in your church.
Yes.
And Sheetal says, I know this girl, it's not an overdose.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so they short circuit that 40 minutes.
Right. So it's actually crazy. There's like, if you break down the story, which takes like so long to tell, if you were to tell every little detail, there's so many like crazy things that like are just so clearly God's miracles happening from the get-go. Like just before I even get into any of the details with the hospital, the fact that like my AVM ruptured when I was in my dorm 10 minutes away from a hospital.
Yeah.
I travel internationally. It could have ruptured on my way back to South Africa. It could have ruptured on a 14-hour flight. Like any time, it could have happened if I was asleep. I would have died. Like there's just no way
Or
around it.
if you just laid down and went to sleep
Exactly.
right
Yeah, I wouldn't have made it. But with the there's so many crazy split-second things that are just so clearly God's hand on the situation. Like for example, Sheetal has 2 kids and they were in daycare at the time, and she, for some reason, decided to get them out of daycare early. She had no idea why, but she was like, I'm going to go pick up my kids early, because she wanted to be available. It turns out she was available to actually help at the hospital.
Yeah.
She had a friend at North Shore Hospital, which is where I was, and she called him and she was like, you need to find this patient. Like, she had a headache. You need to take her to get CT scans. She doesn't have a drug overdose.
Yeah.
So this guy like runs through the hospital looking for me, and he's the guy that actually was like, take her to go get some like brain scans, because like she doesn't have a drug overdose. And like even that was part of one of the things that like saved my life, because I would have died on that table if they were.
You would have died waiting for the drug test to come back.
Literally, yeah, because they take like 40 minutes or something like that, because they try to figure out like what kind of drugs you overdose on, and I obviously was dead sober. But yeah, they took me to go get CT scans, and then once they saw it, they were like, oh my goodness, like we need to get her into emergency surgery right away. And then I was rushed into like a 6-hour surgery, I think. Yeah.
It's absolutely horrifying and faith-stirring all at the same time, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know?
it was definitely horrifying for sure.
I mean, you get that from that side. I mean, I'm thinking of it from the side of a parent. I mean, that's absolute worst case scenario, worst nightmare. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It was definitely like, for me, it was kind of just, I was in survival mode for like a long time, because I was just like, I have to make it through this. I have to just live. And then after that, when I was hearing like my parents' stories and my sister's stories, and like all of my friends, and like hearing about like you and Sandy, it's like heartbreaking to hear about the reactions of the people closest to me. Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah. So, I mean, in all of that, I mean, there's a brain surgeon on call, or they have to get a brain surgeon in, or
Yeah. So normally with like, I think I'm not an expert on this. I just know my own story, but I'm pretty sure like there's not a lot of emergency brain surgeries that happen. Usually they're planned and prepared for. So there's not often like a neurosurgeon just ready to go.
Sure.
There was for me. Like it was crazy, but one surgeon started the operation, and then this other surgeon came in, and he was the sweetest man. He was so attentive. He came to visit me twice after I left his care. I was at a different hospital, and he came to visit me. He was so amazing, and he's like was so skilled. So they made an incision from my ear on this side all the way around to my ear on this side. And usually, I have a scar there, but you can barely see it. Usually what happens with AVMs is if there's an emergency situation, if there's a rupture, what the surgeon will do is they'll go in, they'll remove the blood, and then they'll close you back up again. And then a few days later, they'll go back and actually remove the source. So they'll remove the bleed, the actual AVM. So usually there's like 2 to 3 surgeries involved with AVMs, minimum. I had one surgery. He went in, he removed the blood and removed the actual source of the bleed, closed me up, and that was the only surgery I got. Wow. So after that, with like the medical side of things, they put me into a medically induced coma, and they were expecting me to be in the coma for about like 3 days. I had like intubations and everything. And like usually the normal or average time is 3 days, I think. And then 8 hours later, I was like stirring, despite all of the medications. And they were like, I guess she's good to wake up now.
I guess she's ready.
Yeah. So like 8 or 9 hours later, they extubated me. And I woke up and I turned to my mom and I was like, my head hurts.
She's like, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wonder why.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just crazy. Like all the things that happened, like, it's just crazy. Like I would have been in the ICU for like way longer if that didn't happen. And I was only in the ICU for like 5 days total. Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, you just see the hand of God. It just like, and like you're saying, I mean, this is minutes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got minutes to live.
Oh yeah.
Even once you're at the hospital, it's not over.
No.
You've still got minutes to live. And it's amazing for me when I think about how God orchestrated and God ordained, like for your mom to call you back.
Yeah.
Because you would have laid down and just...
I would have laid down, taken a nap.
If your mom called you that night, it's over, you know?
Right.
And so your mom calls. Sheetal's able to get to the hospital.
Yep.
Do you know what I'm saying? And
it's
so
crazy.
there's just like, there's minutes that are shaved off this time.
Yeah.
But it's not like, it's critical minutes. It's life-saving minutes.
Yeah.
Because even in that, it's like, you've got minutes to live.
Yeah.
So if any one of those things doesn't line up, you're in a way more serious kind of situation.
If I had never texted my mom that I had a headache, because I was at college, I just moved out 4 months ago. I was like living the independent life.
Living your best life.
Living my best life. Like even the fact that I texted my mom that I had a headache, like I wouldn't normally do that. Like a headache is a headache.
Yeah.
You take some Advil and you move on with your day.
Yeah.
But even just that I was like, I think I have a headache. Like I don't know what's wrong. Like if I hadn't let her know, I was in a single dorm room. Like there was no roommates.
Yeah.
Nobody had the key to my room.
Yeah.
Like nobody would have known. I would have just passed away in my bedroom.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Crazy how the Lord orchestrates, eh?
I know. Crazy.
My buddy Ian McKellar, he always says this. He says God is the already previous God. Like He's already in our future.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like you see it in that. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, gee, this major thing, but God's already there in the minutes that are saved, which ultimately save your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was something that I had to realize months after.
Sure.
Because for me, from the patient side of it, I was living a very healthy lifestyle. I was at college. I had a great group of friends. And then the next thing I realized, I'm waking up in the hospital. I don't know what happened. I don't know what went wrong. I was transferred to a rehab hospital for 2 weeks, and then I did outpatient therapy for like 3 months. So on my side of things, I was like, my mentality was, how did God let this happen?
Sure.
And I was like blaming him, and I was angry, and I was like, you're supposed to be a good God.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
Why did I deserve this? And it took me a long time to actually go back and realize and look at all of the instances of little tiny miracles that led to the miracle of me still being here.
Yeah.
But that's something that you have to do after you're out of that grieving process. Because I was like, I lost, like, it felt like I'd lost everything, minus my life, obviously. But I was just so angry at everything. But, yeah.
Yikes. So is that a bit of a crisis of faith for you? I mean, does it take you a little while to realize those things?
Oh yeah, I was in a crisis of faith for a long time. I kind of like, so 3 months, I did 3 months of outpatient therapy, and then Jody Romero asked me to preach at that Rise Up that summer.
I remember that.
So I kind of was like, I didn't have a lot of time to process and work through that anger and those feelings of disappointment and those negative feelings. I kind of just was realizing the good things that were happening, and I was like, I'm just going to focus on the good. I'm just going to focus on the fact that I'm alive.
Good.
Which was really good for the time because I wasn't ready to process those emotions. And then about a year after the bleed, it took me a year to like get out of survival mode. I started thinking about what happened and like actually working through those feelings of like loss of childhood. I had to face my own mortality. Like I was 19 years old and I was seconds away from dying.
Sure.
Like I had to realize the gravity of what happened to me. Like I realized that I had never fully taken a step and been like, I was almost dying or like I was dying. I was just like, something bad's happening to me. You're in the hospital, get through it, do outpatient therapy, get through it, write a preach the word, and then go back to school. I was just such in like next step, because I didn't want to go to the place of sadness around that event. So about like 12 to 18 months after it happened, that's when I started processing things. And that's when I had probably a bigger crisis of faith because I was like, I have to choose to trust God and choose to look at the good and choose to realize that God saved me instead of, I mean, AVMs have like a 50 to 75% mortality rate. Like I had to choose to be grateful to still be there, which was really hard to get there. Yeah.
And people talk about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah.
And I think people, in general, people think it's a military term. You know what I mean? It's something people come back from war with. But we're realizing more and more that actually it is simply that. It's post-traumatic.
Yeah.
And obviously what happened to you was traumatic.
Right.
And so is there any of that kind of stuff that you had to deal with at the time?
Yeah.
Just like this trauma from this thing? Is there?
Yeah. So when I was leaving the hospital, I obviously had a great care team. I was when I was leaving the rehab hospital. So I was on the brain trauma floor. So they were very familiar with these types of injuries. And the doctors were like, she's had brain surgery. Like there's probably going to be some chemical differences in her brain just from going into somebody's brain and messing with it. So they were like, she might develop depression, she might develop anxiety or have some troubles with that. She might develop PTSD, just be on the lookout for it. And I obviously was like 3 weeks after brain surgery. I wasn't caring about that kind of stuff. But it was about 18 months after that stuff started to hit. Because again, I was going through the process and the digging deep and like figuring that stuff out. But yeah, I was diagnosed with PTSD. And thankfully I went to therapy for it. Like I was able to work through, I did like about 2 to 3 months of just focus on PTSD therapy. which was very helpful. But like it was a crazy experience because I was like, I didn't think this would ever happen to me, and now I'm getting panic attacks. I'm like having traumatic flashbacks. I'm having nightmares, insomnia, like all of this crazy stuff that I was like, I never thought this would happen to me. Like I thought this was done. I thought I could move on with my life.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the memories come back and it just like hits me and hits me and hits me.
Sure.
So yeah, that stuff definitely did hit. Thankfully I've walked through that. It's not completely gone, but I'm in a much better place now. Yeah. I was the first person in my family to do therapy. But it was kind of like I was in a really bad place that my family actually sat me down and they were like, we're putting you in therapy. Like, you need to go see somebody. Because it was affecting my life. Like, I was really depressed. I was really anxious. I was having like horrible flashbacks. I'd have panic attacks if I'd go to school because I would be by the place where it happened to me.
Of course, yeah.
Like, I still haven't been back to that building because I'm just like, I just don't want to look at that place where like such a negative thing happened. But yeah, it was definitely more so a thing of like, the people in my life were like, something's wrong with Hannah. Like, she's not okay. She needs to go see somebody about it. So it was more so flack from my side because I just didn't want to do it. I was like, I don't want to do that.
I can't picture that. I can't picture a teenager not wanting to do what their parents suggest. It's like such a hard concept for me to picture a teenager not listening to their parents.
Yeah, but it was a bad situation. I was like living on campus and I was just like really not doing well because I was living really close to where it happened to me. So I was like walking past that dorm every day and I was like having these really terrible, I'd get back to my dorm room at the end of the day and I'd like cry and it would just be so sad. So my parents, they moved me out of my dorm room early. They were like, we're bringing you home. You need to get away from the situation and we're putting you in therapy. Like, we're finding a therapist. I don't really care what you have to say, like, we're doing it. Which I'm very thankful for now. But yeah, it's definitely something that like we had to figure out as a family, like finding the right one. And we actually found one through somebody in the church. We went to somebody in the church and he works with therapists and he recommended somebody, Christian counselor. So it was great.
So, a buddy of mine lost his wife very, very suddenly, right? Almost the same kind of thing. But I think for her it was an artery in her. They were celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary, and they were in South Africa, up in the Drakensberg, like hours away from a hospital. And I think she had like a major artery in her neck burst, and she was dead within minutes. And it's like, gee, if you weren't up in the mountains, and actually people have said it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't have mattered if you were 10 minutes drive away from a hospital. It's like this was over in minutes, you know. And I always like, you know, his thing was always so fascinating to me because he said this to me. He said, I'll never ask God why. I'll just ask God what's next for me. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And I mean, that's a tough thing.
I definitely didn't have that perspective for a long time. I was obsessed with finding out why because I was like, I don't think I'll ever know why. Like, I don't know if that's anything that like we'll ever know. Like, we don't know why bad things happen to us. They just happen because the world's broken. But I was like why? I was like, really angry. I was like really angry. I was like, what did I do?
I'm serving the Lord. I'm doing everything right.
Exactly. I'm like, if you look at my family on paper, which is the wrong mindset to have. Now I know this. But I was like, if you look at us on paper, like we literally moved continents to plant a church. Yeah. Like, I've been serving you my whole life. What did I do to deserve this? And I had to relearn that mind, like I had to fix that mindset because nobody deserves these bad things happening to them. And God never says in the Bible, if you follow me, bad things will never happen to you. He doesn't promise that. He says, if you follow me, you'll go to heaven. Like, that's it. And like,
the flip side of that's also true though, right? We don't deserve grace.
Exactly. We don't.
It's such a hard concept to think. Like, we don't deserve bad stuff. That we don't deserve good things either from God. You know what I mean? It's like we've fallen, fallible, broken human beings. Yeah. So God pours out His love, mercy, and grace on. You know. Yeah.
And like, I'm grateful for that mind shift change because like I could have gotten stuck in that. I could have been like, I refuse to see the good. I'm upset that I had to go through 5 months of of like a hardship. Like I'm upset. And I could have just been stuck in that and just never gotten over it.
So what's that time period? What's 5 months? 5 months till you're back at school?
So it happened in February. I was doing outpatient rehab March to May. So like 4 months, 4 or 5 months of just like hospitals and doctors and therapy and like just living as a patient, like not living as a person, living as a patient. Because like that was one of the craziest things to get used to is I was independent. I'd moved out. I was at college. I was a student. I was loving life. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm just a patient. And like, I'm like, that's all that my life is right now. At the hospital, I'd get my blood drawn every morning. I'd get shots every day. I'd take pills every morning. And like, it just is crazy, like the rut that you get stuck in, because like that was all my life was. It was just doctors and rehab and hospitals and therapy and all that stuff.
I remember Sandy and I flying in, and I think we flew in just when they'd moved you from ICU into the regular ward or whatever that ward was.
Yeah.
And we flew in, and I mean, the trauma on your family was also so obvious still at that stage. You know what I mean? And we were able to step in and do a few little things.
Yeah.
Remember
which was so helpful.
Transporting you from that hospital to the rehab hospital.
Right. Yeah, the little van ride.
That was rickety.
They strapped me in my wheelchair and I was like wobbling down the highway.
Put you in a wheelchair and strap you in.
Yeah.
And I'm up front, Sandy's in the back with you, and I'm like, should I be in the back?
Sandy's holding like all the stuffed animals and the potted plants that I got from the hospital.
And we're like, should I be in the back there in case this wheelchair comes unclipped, or what are we doing here?
I was like, I just got out of surgery. I don't want to get into another accident.
Exactly. But that rehab hospital as well is also, it's a world-class facility, eh?
Yeah, it's been the #1 rehab facility for like 28 years or something like that. So it was crazy that we got in. First of all, the fact that it's in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to travel, but like people will fly in from across the world to go to this hospital. But I literally describe it. It was like a resort for sick people. Like the rooms were huge, bathrooms were ginormous, like the facilities were so nice.
Yeah.
And it was like such a blessing, even with the financial side, like the amount of financial aid we got from the hospital because I was a student was just amazing. But yeah, it was a crazy, like amazing, beautiful hospital that we were at in downtown Chicago. The views were great. Yeah. So it was like, yeah, I'm sick and I'm in rehab, but also like, look how blessed I am to be here.
I remember we were there when they first came to do like physio with you.
Yeah,
the
like
physiotherapists came in and they're going to get you up on your feet.
Right.
And I can remember her saying, put your shoes on, and you saying, should I tie my shoes? Like, because we're not understanding the process yet. Are they just going to have you stand up? Are they going to have you walk down the hall? What are we doing?
Yeah.
And I can remember her saying, put your shoes on, and then you going, should I tie my shoes? And she goes, do you think you should tie your shoes? I'm like, bro, can you see me standing here? Can you give the girl a minute to recover from brain surgery? I mean, like, can you just answer the question?
They were like, I mean, granted, they know what they're doing, but they like really pushed me from the beginning. Yeah.
Those physios are brutal.
Like so the first day, or like the first couple days there, I would do so you have to do physical therapy, occupational therapy, and then speech and language pathology, which is like brain therapy. So the first couple days I did like maybe 1 to 3 sessions because they were like, we don't want to overload you. But I mean, the therapy sessions themselves were like pretty intense. But the beginning first days were like, for occupational therapy, it would be like, let's go take a shower, because I had to like relearn how to take a shower. And the first days with physical therapy, I would get wheeled to the little walking room, and then I got strapped up to this harness because I couldn't really hold myself up. And they like had to basically like retrain my feet how to walk. I hadn't like forgotten how to walk, but I hadn't done it for a while, so I was strapped up to a harness. And then 2 weeks later, it was like 6 hours of therapy a day, because they really ramp it up. They're like, you're here for 2 to 3 weeks, like let's get all the stuff that we can do in. And then after that, I moved home. And then I did, I think it's like fuzzy because I like blocked a lot of this out. I think I did 3 months of outpatient therapy with Shirley Ryan, which is the rehab facility. And that was really intense. I hated that because I was like, this is stupid. I'm upset. I just want to lie in my bed. But it was intense because I think I did like 25 hours of therapy a week.
It's like a full-time job.
Yeah. So it was like 3 to 4 days a week, and I'd be there for 7 hours at a time. So you have 2 PT sessions, 2 OT, and then 2 brain therapy sessions a day. And then you get a 45-minute break for lunch. So like literally you're there from like 8 to 4. And it was downtown, but like my mom has the funniest like memories of this because she was like, every time we'd get in the car, Hannah would just sit and like just stare out the window like I was taking her to prison or something. Because I was just like, this is so boring. But yeah, I mean, it was really helpful because like I needed it obviously. Because thankfully I don't have like any major neurological deficits, which is again a miracle.
Yeah.
Basically unheard of with AVMs. But there definitely were some things that like I needed to work on. Like my brain was a little bit tender, a little bit it was just, I had just had brain surgery.
Sure.
So yeah, there was definitely some things that like I needed to work on, and it was very helpful, but I hated it.
So I mean, again, just this is maybe a little bit of a tender question. I mean, where are you now? I mean, after effects, do you feel any of that kind of stuff? Is there stuff that you felt was easy for you before that's a little harder for you now, that takes a little bit more concentration?
Yeah, definitely. Again, the after effects, like, hardly noticeable. Like, they're very easy to deal with. Like, I have just heard so many crazy stories of AVMs, people who end up with their bodies half paralyzed or something like that. Literally all I have is like some focus issues and some motivational issues. Like that's pretty much it. Like it's definitely harder to do school. Like it's definitely harder at school with this new brain, which was really hard to become accustomed to because that's what I prided myself on. I was like, I was a good student. Like I did well in school.
Yeah.
And then I went back to school like 8 months after the bleed, and I was like, why is this so hard? Like, why can I can't pay attention in class. I can't follow the lecturer. Like, I'm trying to pay attention. I'm trying to like look and listen to somebody for 45 minutes, and I cannot even stay focused on you for 2 minutes. And I was like getting really disheartened, and I can't remember who explained it to me, but it like helped me so much. So basically, as you're going through school, like from preschool to whenever you stop your education, your brain is learning how to learn. So you figure out like, am I a visual learner? Am I a hands-on learner? Like you get to figure that stuff out and figure out how your brain works.
Sure.
And one of my doctors was like, you're at Northwestern University with a 6-month-old brain, basically. Wow. Like you don't know how your new brain learns. You don't know how your new brain functions. So right now I'm still at Northwestern with like a 3-year-old brain. Like I'm still figuring it out. Like I'm not obviously speaking like a 3-year-old, but like in terms of like how my brain works now, like it's 3 years old. Like I'm still figuring it out. So that's been the hardest thing is like going back to school has been really difficult just because like I used to be like on top of it and like getting my assignments done, and now I'm like, I can't even focus on a lecture anymore. So that's been the hardest thing for sure. But like, yeah, that's it. That's like pretty much the only issue, which is crazy.
It's absolutely wild. Just an absolute miracle. Eh?
Yeah.
Because again, I'm sure the after effects, whatever it is also determined up front there, right? By how quickly you can get surgery, how quickly you can get help. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. So, it also is determined on where the AVM is.
Yeah.
So AVMs can happen like anywhere. They usually happen in your spine or anywhere in your brain. They can happen literally in any part of your brain. And that's the thing about AVMs is there's not like a lot known about the after effects.
It's something you're born with, right?
Yeah.
So that thing's just sitting there for 19 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the thing is like it could happen at any time. And the other crazy thing is like it's crazy because like I shouldn't have made it out as good as I'm doing now. Like I shouldn't have I made it out, because usually what happens is people will experience symptoms because it's a thing in your brain. Like you're obviously going to have symptoms of it. So people usually, like with AVMs, if it doesn't rupture, like you usually figure it out first, and like they're able to remove it, which is why like, but I'm like, I have nothing, no symptoms. All of a sudden there's a huge bleed on my brain. Like I should have some sort of neurological like defect. Nothing.
Gee,
Nothing.
it's mind-boggling.
I know. Every time I like tell this story to someone new, they're like, how, like what? And I'm like, yeah, it's just something that happened to me. Like it is what it is. But like whenever I tell somebody the story, they're always like, they sit there with their mouth open for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to see you now, I mean, obviously I knew you before that. To see you now, for me,
Yeah.
it doesn't look like anything, you know what I'm saying? And I know there were some things right afterwards that we all noticed about you, you know what I mean, in terms of emotions and and all of those kind of things. But I mean, like for me sitting here with you now, how long ago did you, 3.5 years later?
3.5 years, yeah.
It's like it doesn't look like that thing touched you.
Yeah.
Which is, and I'm sure you feel some of those
Right,
things. But
right.
for us,
Yeah.
and that's probably why, like when you tell your story, people are like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you in this place that in many ways looks like untouched by that thing.
Right.
That,
Right.
I mean, and that's absolutely miraculous. Man.
Yeah. I mean, like, yes, it was crazy and heartbreaking and was such a horrible thing to walk through, but like I'm so grateful it happened, because like it completely changed everything about the way I see the world. And also it like led me to like what I want to do with my life now, because I was studying mechanical engineering and now I want to work with people with that kind of brain injury. Like my plan is to go and like work in a rehab hospital with people like that, because I'm like, I can't let this gift of being fine go to waste. Like I can't do it. Like I know what these patients are going through because I walked through it.
Yeah.
Like I can't let them, I don't know, I just feel such a calling, because I'm like, I can't let it go to waste, the fact that I'm okay and just not do anything about it.
That's incredible, man. So what would you say to somebody today that's going, obviously not the same thing, but a similar thing, you know, because I guess we can go through those periods of time for anybody. I mean, 5 months could be chemo.
Yeah.
It could be anything like that. You know what I mean? What would you say to somebody that's like struggling with any kind of like prolonged thing, a prolonged illness, or this has been months, or I had a traumatic thing?
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's a hard question. I mean, for me, like I didn't really start any of the emotional healing until I was out of survival mode. And I don't know if you really can process through your emotions if you're going through something like that, because your brain is just hardwired to get you out of that situation. Gosh, I don't know. I mean, lean on those around you for help. Like that was the thing that I needed the most, like my church family and my family. Like that was it. That was all I had. It was just me, my doctors, my family, my church family, and Jesus, obviously.
Sure.
But yeah, I needed my family to step in and help. And then you guys, who I consider family, like you just dropped everything and came. So I'm like, that's just a beautiful picture of like the church. Because like you were in Denver and you're just like, whatever, I'm going to drop everything. I'm going to come to Chicago. I'm going to be there for my family. So I'd say just lean on your family and lean on God. Like there's not really anything else you can do. There's not like some magic prayer you can say to help you get out of it. You just got to go through it.
So Sandy reminded me this morning, you know, that because instantly once your mom knew something was wrong, I don't know how many people she texts, but certainly Sandy was one of them. And this was what the text said: pray for Hannah now. Yeah. That's all. And I mean, you get it now, because you're not like, okay, I need to explain what an AVM is and I need to send her, you know what I mean? The text just said, pray for Hannah now. Yeah. And so Sandy runs into my study and we're like, has she been in a car wreck? Right. Do you know what I mean? We don't know anything. Yeah. But Sandy reminded me this morning, you know, we didn't know what was right. But we started praying instantly, Father, preserve her life. Wow. Without knowing what was going on with you. Yeah. We were just like, Lord, save her life. Wow. Preserve her life. Wow. You know
That's
what I'm
crazy.
saying? And it's just,
Yeah.
but it is, I think fascinating just to see the hand of God.
Yeah, I think
How God has
yeah.
had his hand on you at every step, right from the beginning till now.
Yeah, for
You know.
sure. I think like to that, like my parents, which was this was something I had to like deal with after the fact, because my parents, like when it happened, Instagram, they were like, let's get our church people around the world praying
Absolutely.
for Hannah.
Yeah.
And it's been crazy because at first when I found out, I was like, you posted the most traumatic thing that ever happened to me on Instagram. And I was like, what the
Thanks a
heck?
lot.
I was like, thanks a lot. Now everybody knows. But like, I'm so grateful for it because I had hundreds of people praying for me around the world.
Yeah.
Like, because they were posting updates like from the get-go. Yeah. I had like Paul Collinson in Australia praying for me. I had people in Seattle praying for me. I had people in France praying for me, people that I've never met, that I've been able to meet since then. Like I'll introduce myself and they're like, oh, you're that girl that I prayed for. And I'm like, well, thank you for praying for me. It worked. But yeah, that was something that is, I feel like is such a cool testimony is like the power of prayer, like from church family around the world, just from those like relational connections. Yeah.
So are you out of that identity?
What identity?
Are you out of the girl that had the brain bleed and the girl we prayed for? Because sometimes those things can stick, you know. And I mean, I'm just picking up on it because of what you said. Oh, you're the girl we prayed for.
Yeah.
Are you out of that identity? Are you now just Hannah Sudworth that's back at school and counting for God? And
I don't know. It was definitely a lot more prevalent, like when it was happening. Like I would go to Equips and like people would be like, "Oh, you're the girl. Like you're the miracle girl." And like, to be honest, that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody. Like to go up to someone and call them the miracle girl, like then you're like, okay, you want me to, I can't do any miracles, but like, yeah, I think I'm definitely a lot more out of it now. But at the time it was like, I was like, there's a lot of pressure, and like unsaved people that like would know my story. Like I got so many times where people would be like, oh, you know that like you're supposed to be here now because like your life was saved. And I was like, well, would I not supposed to be here if that didn't happen to me? Or like some people are like I've literally had people come up to me and be like, oh, I want some of your good juju. Like let me rub your elbow for some good juju. And I'm like, I don't have like magic dust flying out of my elbows. Yeah. So it was definitely like weird to like be that when it was happening, because like people would find out and they'd be like, ooh, like let me talk to this girl. And I'm like, I have nothing to say to you. Like, I don't know what you want me to say. But also the first hospital that I was at, North Shore Hospital, they do a quarterly magazine. And they asked me to be like on the cover of their magazine, like in May. So it happened in February, and then in May they wanted to put out like their spring magazine. And so they asked me to like do a photo shoot, which was really fun. But on the title of the magazine, it's a picture of me, and it says "Miracle Girl," and I was like, okay, great. Like,
back to that.
Yeah, back to that. Which was really cool. Like I will say, it was a great experience because like my mom got to talk about God in the magazine, and they actually put her quotes in. Yeah, and like this magazine went to like 250,000 homes or something like that in the area, and also in like any North Shore hospital, like that's the magazine that's at the doctor's office. Sure. So like you never know what impact that had, like being able to read about God's hand on this situation. Yeah. I don't know how many lives that touched. Yeah. Like that's like what you were talking about with like the seed. Like my mom was able to plant that seed, and that was able to reach so many people. Yeah. So I don't really mind being called the miracle girl if it's able to like help people out, I guess.
I think you should start demanding that. When people go, Hannah, you just go, miracle girl, please.
Yeah, I used to hate it. I was like, this is so much pressure, and I'm like, I don't know what that means, but now I'm like, whatever, it's cool. It's a really cool miracle. Like I'm okay with that being attached to my name. It's like a cool testimony.
It's an absolutely incredible testimony, which is why we've, like the minute we started to conceptualize this show, we need Hannah on. You know? So thanks, Hannah.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for coming on and being vulnerable and sharing your story and your struggles and all of that stuff. It's really, like I said, for me, even, and I was part of it a little bit, it's absolutely incredible to see you, because to see you, I don't see that.
Yeah.
For me, there was no difference between before and after.
Right.
And that is absolutely miraculous and
Yeah.
absolutely part of the God story,
For sure.
And then I think the fact that it's caused you to have a different life
Oh, yeah.
calling in some way,
Yeah.
that you want to help people that have been through that,
Yeah.
mechanical engineer, well, that's cool. You can
That's cool. Not for me.
build bridges or blow stuff up, whichever way you chose to go. Do
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
I guess it's a civil engineer, but anyway. but you know what I'm saying? It's just like that. But now to actually be able to help people and trust God that there's opportunity for you even to bring your faith into that and bring
Right.
the God story into that, and
Right.
for you to be able to tell your story to patients and be able to encourage them in that way,
Yeah.
I think is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, I'm grateful that it happened. Like, I'm glad it happened. It was crazy, but it changed my
Yeah.
life. So,
Yeah. Thanks again, man.
yeah, of course.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for
Appreciate
having me.
Yeah, man. It's been a delight, eh?
Yeah.
It's been a delight having you in my home and staying in
Yeah.
my basement. And I'm just disappointed I've only been able to give you one scare, one fright.
Yeah,
But I'll work
I'm
on
not.
that over the next 24 hours.
No, please.
Thanks for joining us, guys. Hit like, subscribe, leave a comment, and we'd love to hear from you. And thanks, man. Let's talk soon.